Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Mystery Science Theater 3000, episode 1106, Starcrash. I think this episode has a lot of hype going into it. I had not heard of this before, but a lot of people have, as being a ripoff of Star Wars. And although I love ripoffs of Star Wars like Saturn VII or Black Hole, or at least I love seeking them out, I don't know if I like them at movies or anything. But Starcrash is kind of one of those, and I knew a lot of people who were kind of older than me who really were excited for Starcrash. They knew about it. I, however, did not know about it. It's a very interesting episode of Mystery Science Theater because it tries out a lot of new things. It has probably the biggest guest star they've ever had, and experiments with the forum while still having a movie that at least interests most of the fan base and me myself. Makes an episode riffing wise that isn't the funniest, but is at least a really enjoyable episode. And I think this episode has a lot of potential, and it has already to grab you in because, you know, obviously if you're into the show, you sort of like sci-fi and you like this sort of thing, and obviously everyone likes Star Wars, and it's kind of fun on Mystery Science Theater to have them do a Star Wars ripoff, one that was made apparently because the director had just been given the book and kind of the basic idea of Star Wars before it really hit. And they're like, we should do a ripoff of this. And they went quickly into production, not doing what like Black Hole and stuff would do, which would get around to, you know, after years and like develop something. They like really went quickly into production. You can tell it's a really laughable, horrible, very male perm heavy kind of a sci-fi film, and it's really bad. I think this would be a difficult watch without Mystery Science Theater 3000 because there's so many parts of just watching people walk down a hallway and quiet parts and just like mind-numbingly bad parts, and having Marjane Gottner, who I didn't really know about while watching the film, or before I had heard of. He was like a preacher thing from this documentary, and they mentioned him on the Mystery Science Theater 3000 Revival League podcast episode with Jonah, where he goes over every episode. I mentioned him like first when they talked about the episode, and I was like, what the fuck, who are they talking about? And he's kind of like the Luke character who has special powers, who Jonah actually dresses up as in one host segment. So I think this movie has a lot of interesting things about it, particularly like, why was Christopher Plummer in it? Mainly apparently to go to Rome, because he said he would even do a porno if it was in Rome. He just loves Rome. He doesn't care what he's in. And David Hasselhoff being in this just for a few seconds, but he's named like pretty early in the credits, so clearly like maybe this was a re-release after like Knight Rider hit big or something. This episode kind of plays with the forum of riffing. Obviously the song that's like this Beach Boys-y song that's in the Starcrash during the theater sequence. They've never done a song in the theater sequence within the theater. I've never seen that happen. Jonah gets out a guitar and they do a song like during the movie. Like, that's pretty unusual. They really play with the forum in this one, and that might be because they have a good writer's room. They have all the normal people who are in the cast, like Hampton, Barron, Jonah, the other writers too, but they also have Paul Chaplin, Joel's obviously in this one, Bill Corbett helped write on this one, Mary Jo Pehl, and Dana Gould, who's a famous comedian. I don't exactly know when they said written by, if they're involved in the riffing or just the host segments or what, particularly because this one has the big Jerry Seinfeld guest appearance, but it seemed like from taking off Crow's head to doing the elevator gag to a song in it, there seemed to be more visual gags going on in the theater. And although at first that bothered me, it really works with this film. And since I feel like this movie sort of sucks you in because you're a little fascinated at this train wreck, it's kind of like Avalanche in a way. Actually, I think this movie's worse than Avalanche, in the way that you'd end up kind of catch yourself watching this. And in the ancient days of Sci-Fi Channel, before Mystery Science Theater was even on it, and they play stuff like this, I would watch something like this. So it was like kind of one of those B movies that I think we would often be fascinated by, especially if you're a sci-fi nerd, as I was when I was in middle school. Oftentimes I think with Mystery Science Theater, it puts me in worlds that I would later get into in terms of cult movies and things. But this is a little different, where it's like, if someone says a Star Wars ripoff, I'd want to see it just because I love Star Wars, and I think that's kind of fascinating. Like Star Wars ripoffs that none of them became franchises because they all kind of fucked it up. You'd think someone would have a ripoff Star Wars franchise, but they never got their shit together, especially how big Star Wars is. I guess this was sort of the first one because it came out so quickly. It kind of is fascinating in that regard. So they kind of sort of already have you in that, and they can kind of have some fun within that. And there's such big spaces between them. Jonah said it was both they wanted to experiment with more, but they had to fill time. And this episode kind of let them experiment more with it. And I really welcome it at this point. This is the 6th episode at this point in the season. We're getting more and more used to it. Had this been the first one, I think I would have been like, whoa, what the fuck is this nonsense? Like, I would have been upset. Whereas in Starcrash, I'm more primed to it, I'm more used to it. I would say at the beginning I was kind of underwhelmed by the riffing. I didn't think it was as funny. This is the one I've heard a lot about and people were excited for them to do, and I didn't really immediately love it as much. Eventually won me over, and those kind of weird gags I liked a lot more. First I was like adverse to like Gypsy coming down in the theater and things like that, but now I'm getting more and more used to it, and I'm seeing them kind of have more fun with it. The Jerry Seinfeld host segment, I actually thought they used him very well. Jerry Seinfeld has such a persona, it's hard to get him to like, you know, play a character, but I thought he actually worked well within it. It was probably one of my favorite guest appearances so far. I know Jerry Seinfeld and Joel had like a comedy special way back when on HBO together, and they do know each other, and I think everyone always wanted Jerry Seinfeld in the 90s to do like a guest appearance on the show to kind of help its profile, but it's cool that that eventually happened, because I think that's one of the things everyone sort of wanted to happen at some point. And I like the Delaware jokes. Force Awakens, was it like the Force went back to sleep? I do actually really like this episode. I think one thing, and I've heard in a lot of reviews of this season, is that they don't feel that Jonah and the bots have as much distinct personalities the way they did when Mike and Joel in the previous iterations. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, because I think, especially in the Crow T-Robots World War space with a Swiss Army planet, that feels very Crow to me. Tom Servo, especially in the last one with the monster movie thing, that felt very Tom Servo, but almost Baron's version of it. So I feel like those two personalities are already kind of there, but I feel like Jonah's kind of like their friendly millennial sort of roommate type of guy. I feel like that's different than Mike, who is more of like their buddy. They're kind of like boys club kind of a buddy, and then Joel, who's kind of more of a mother figure, I guess. This is kind of just the roommate who's chill and will do the dishes and talk to you about movies and vinyl and things. And I think he works within that, and we're seeing that personality more and more come out. I feel like they're taking on a lot with this season and succeeding, and Starcrash shows that a lot. It shows what they're taking on, what they're doing with it. How this one I think flowed a lot better in terms of having like even a guest. I've noticed people forget Jerry Seinfeld's in this, and that's not to say it's unmemorable, but it flows so well within it. I feel like the Neil Patrick Harris one for most people didn't work as well. I liked it, but I think it sticks out a little more, and maybe not in great ways. I think in this one it flows within the whole thing. This is a little more fun because you're seeing a crappy sci-fi movie, and it's one that I think probably got on, people always made lists like movies that Mystery Science Theater should do, and I don't want to suggest things because I like when they pick stuff no one has heard of. I think this is maybe a little more well known, which, you know, maybe I'm being a stickler about this, but I think the movie choices were good, because this is another one that people have mentioned as being like so bad it's fun to watch, and I think it definitely is one, but it's one that you'd want to watch with people while making fun of it. Avalanche I can imagine watching by myself. This one I could never imagine, so I'm glad Jonah and the bots were there to watch it with me. Even apparently I read that the girl who's like always in a bikini, both her and David Hasselhoff got food poisoning, and apparently she said that the plastic suit thing came in handy because they both had like diarrhea, which is fucking gross, but I thought I'd tell you that anyway. This is not a good movie at all, but I think it's a good fun episode. It reminds me of the flow of Avalanche, where I don't think it's the funniest. I think Cry Wilderness still holding best of the season as of right now, but I think this one has a lot of fun to it. It's a really fun episode. It's fun to see them play around with the form. It's fun to see them do a song, which has already become a favorite, probably second to the song in Reptilicus, but this is a really good episode. I wouldn't recommend watching this one first. I honestly think Cry Wilderness was maybe a better one to watch first than Reptilicus, but I would put this on the better end of this season. I think it's a really cool episode. I think it's great what they did with the episode and really had fun with it and did more than this. I think if you were waiting for them to do Starcrash, you would not be disappointed with this. It took a little while for the riffs to really get good, but when they did, it was really funny, and they did some stuff with it, like taking off Servo's head, doing an elevator gag, doing a song in the theater. They really played with the form that is Mystery Science Theater. The water thing not working and then it going black. I noticed there's something that's going to go on with the water technology thing that King of Forrester is. I noticed that there's somewhat continuity, but not as heavy, just like light continuity, which I think works a lot better than the Sci-Fi Channel stuff, or like what Nostalgia Critic does or something, or Linkara or whatever. That stuff's horrible, but like light continuity I think works a little better, so I'm interested to see where that's going. Oftentimes I think when you have like the Mads in the theater and things, I never like that as much when they play with the form, but this is playing with the form that I really enjoyed and liked, other than I think there was a hot dog gag I didn't love in it. Other than that, I think they did a great job with the silhouettes and the riffing and playing around with the form and doing something interesting and different with it. I don't think it disappoints at all and becomes one of the funner episodes of the season. Even if it's not the best, it's definitely one of the more fun ones. So if you have seen Mystery Science Theater 3000, episode 1106, Starcrash, and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.